Welcome to the Audacity to Podcast, episode 109, What's Coming in 2013. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Audacity to Podcast. I'm Daniel J. Lewis, and this is a how-to podcast about podcasting and using Audacity. It's where I give you the guts and teach you the tools to podcast with passion, organization, and dialogue. And today's episode is going to be a little bit different. I think you'll find this information helpful, but I'll tell you up front, I will be focusing on the podcast, like not sharing information or how-tos or tutorials or stuff, but I will be telling you what's coming for the Audacity to Podcast in 2013. And this may inspire you in some ways for what you might want to do with your podcast in 2013. Now, I want to know, in fact, what you are planning to do differently with your podcast in 2013. This isn't necessarily what you're going to upgrade or downgrade or anything like that, but it could be. But just tell me, I would love to know, what are you going to do differently with your podcast in 2013? I want this to be an upcoming episode of the Audacity to Podcast where we can share, several of us, as many as send their feedback, and you can record your feedback, email it. I'll give that in a minute. But I want to hear what you're going to do differently in 2013, whether it be you're going to try maybe adding a new segment in your podcast. Maybe you're going to, in the chat room, Alexis Santos is saying that they're going to try to podcast more consistently. Maybe you're going to try podcasting on a different day or try a different microphone, change your theme song, start a new podcast, maybe upgrade your equipment, do videos or switch to audio or anything like that. I want to hear about that to include for a future episode. So please email me or call in that information. You can email feedback@theaudacitytopodcast.com, and you're welcome to send voice feedback on that too. Just record it and attach it to an email there, or go to theaudacitytopodcast.com and click on the send a voice message link over on the right side, the sidebar. And you can also call in to 903-231-2221 and leave a voicemail there. So tell me, what are you going to do differently with your podcast in 2013? Or maybe you're going to start podcasting. I'd love to hear it. So please tell me that information, and that'll be a future episode of the Audacity to Podcast. So I've got some exciting things to share with you, things that I have already launched, and some things that I am working on, and they might be launched by the time that you hear this, and some stuff that's coming on farther down the road for 2013 for the Audacity to Podcast. Some things I'll be doing on the website and the podcast that will help you better. And I'm sharing this with you because I want you to know what to expect. And perhaps some of the things that I'm going to try doing will inspire you to try doing some of these things as well, or take some other steps and make some changes for 2013. So this is a bit me-focused, but I don't want this to be all about me. This is about how I'm going to try and help you in 2013 and hopefully inspire you with this stuff. So starting off, number one thing, and this may be launched by the time that you hear this, if you're hearing this within the first week of January. Otherwise, after that, this is probably already launched after the first week of January 2013. The Audacity to Podcast will be a mobile-friendly website. I've talked about this before, and I've been working really hard on this, and it's not as simple as just changing the theme, because I don't want to change my branding. I've worked very hard to build a particular branding for the Audacity to Podcast that I don't want to break that, so I'm not just changing themes. I had to really completely rewrite a lot of the code powering my theme and the CSS and styles and different stuff. So what I'm going to end up with is what's called a responsive website, where what you'll be able to do, even if you don't have a mobile device, in your desktop browser, if you load the website, theaudacitytopodcast.com, you can grab the right or left side of your browser and drag it in or out and make the browser narrow or wide, and you'll see that the website reflows its content and some of the layout changes for that. So now that, like I said, if you go to the site at this very moment when I'm recording this It's not launched yet, but it will be launched very soon. So if you don't see it, just check back in a couple days and it might be back. But it's something I'm really excited about because I have a lot of mobile listeners, and I'm planning to do this on all of my podcast websites, especially our Once Upon a Time podcast over at oncepodcast.com, because we get a ton of mobile listeners, people visiting the website. In fact, even downloading and listening to the podcast through a browser, not a podcast program. I recently posted this in several places, and I'll have a screenshot of this in the show notes for this episode at theaudacitypodcast.com/109. I pulled some stats for all of my podcasts in my network in 2013, in December of 2012. So just for 1 month, representing a little bit more than 100,000 downloads for the entire month. Unique downloads, that is. I pulled some stats from the Blueberry Premium Stats system that I have. By the way, fantastic stats there. And it shows me a split up of what kind of software and what kind of platforms are accessing my podcast episode. I won't tell you all of the numbers because that just won't translate very well to audio, but the number of browsers visiting the Audacity to Podcast and downloading episodes exceeds the number of podcatchers like iTunes, Beyond Pod, Instacast, and all of those programs like that. Now, this doesn't factor in Stitcher because Stitcher has their own stats service that does not reflect in my own statistics for downloads. But I'll go ahead and tell you the actual numbers. Among browsers, mobile browsers, tablet or iPad browsers, and desktop web browsers, that represents 47.8% of my downloads of my MP3 files and video files. For podcatchers like iTunes, Beyond Pod, etc., that's 34.8%. Now, just mobile browsers alone, so smartphone and tablet browsers, represent about 39% of my downloads, which is still more than podcatchers altogether. That's mobile and desktop podcatchers. So I'm getting more people listening to my podcast through a browser on their mobile devices than people subscribe to the podcast and listening to it. So I want to make sure that the website is optimized for a mobile experience. And you'll get to see that very soon on the audacitypodcast.com and fairly soon on the other sites as well, my other podcast sites, which you can get all of the other podcasts we do by going over to noodle.mx. So that's something I'm really excited about, and I've been working really hard on that, especially over the Christmas break. And also in 2013 is the Consumer Electronics Show. Now, for me, as I'm recording this, the Consumer Electronics Show is next week in Las Vegas. It's January 8th through the 11th, and I'll be there with the TechPodcasts Network, of which I'm a proud member, and I'll be sharing coverage with them. I'll be doing some live streaming with them over at tpn.tv, as well as recording interviews and video reviews of different products and such over there at CES. It will be really awesome. There's so much stuff there. I'll be approaching it from a podcasting perspective and media production perspective. So I'll be looking at mics and mixers and cameras and recorders and audio equipment and video equipment and anything that other kind of gadget that I think is kind of cool. I'll share it too. And I'll be reviewing that stuff. So you can watch at tpn.tv live between January 8th and 11th. And I'll be posting that information soon on my own website over at theaudacitypodcast.com. So you'll be able to watch the videos, watch them on YouTube as well, and see those product reviews that I share and find out some of the cutting edge technology that's coming out. I'm really excited about this, and yet a little bit nervous too, because I've never done something like this, but it will be awesome. I'll also be at New Media Expo in Las Vegas just before CES for the podcast awards and some of the other stuff there, and probably doing a live podcast or two from New Media Expo. But watch the site for that. And something very important for that is, so I'll be releasing all of these blog posts and podcast episodes and such. And this may affect your podcast subscription. Now, I've worked really hard over the last year to try to switch podcast subscriptions from being a single feed that has both podcasts and blog posts to a podcast-only feed that has just my audio files in it. And then I'm launching a video feed too. More on that in a moment. But I'll have all of these things separate. But if you find that episodes are disappearing from your feed, you might need to resubscribe in your program, depending on what program you use. If you use iTunes or something that relies on the iTunes podcast directory, then you'll be okay. But I just want to make sure if you look at your podcast subscription program and you discover that there's nothing anymore, there are no episodes left, then it might be because you're subscribed to an old feed address and podcast episodes are being bumped out by blog posts that I'm posting from CES. So just FYI, so you know that's coming. So I'm excited about CES 2013. And again, please watch the live coverage of Tech Podcast Network over at tpn.tv. I'll be there live as well as recording some videos to release later. And speaking of videos, that's something else coming for the Audacity to Podcast in 2013. I recently purchased a Canon T4i digital SLR camera. It's a beautiful camera. It's a still photography camera, but it also does wonderful HD videos. If you saw my podcast awards videos where I shared how to vote and how to nominate us and such, those were recorded with the Canon T4i. Now, this is just for my offline video production, but I am going to be doing more video production with this camera. That's why I got this camera. Well, one, to take photos, but also to do some great videos. So you've already seen a little glance at this as I've done some stuff like for the podcast awards, and I did an unboxing video of the ATR 2100 camera, microphone. And also I did a little quick podcasting answers video that I posted on YouTube and here in the audio feed. Well, I'm going to change how I do that in the future. Look for a new video edition of the Audacity to Podcast to show up in iTunes. This won't be just this talking head versions of what I record when I do the Audacity to Podcast live on Mondays at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, GMT -5. I will be skipping January 7th of the episode of the Audacity to Podcast. I won't record a live episode then. So just in case you're wondering, no live episode on January 7th, 2013. But the videos that I'll be producing will be some more quick podcasting answers, some screencast tutorials showing you how to do something in WordPress or in Audacity or a different program, some podcasting gear reviews. I'm really excited about this. I've got some things lined up to review for you, let you see it. I'll review it in visual form, and also some audio and video equipment, how-tos and tutorials and stuff, and some more stuff that I'm really excited about doing. And this will all be video content that I'll be producing, but it will be in a separate feed. So I'm not going to keep pushing video into my audio feed. But if you want video, you'll need to go subscribe to the video edition. And what I'll probably do is every time I release a video, I might come back over to the audio side. And if the content translates well to audio, then I'll certainly cross-post an audio format. Or if it doesn't translate well, and you are only subscribed to the video version or the audio version, I will let you know in the audio version that there's a new video out and what that video is about and where you can get that video, just in case you're not subscribed or you haven't gotten around to it or anything like that. So that way you'll know what's coming out and know to look over at the other feed for it or to check YouTube. Now, I've got a YouTube channel over at theaudacitytopodcast.com/YouTube that jumps you straight to my playlist for the Audacity to Podcast videos on my YouTube channel. So you can watch that, subscribe to that to watch these videos as I release them, or watch for the new video edition of the Audacity to Podcast in iTunes. And I'll have links to these in the show notes at theaudacitytopodcast.com/109. I'm really excited about this. And if you want to participate in some way, like maybe it's you want to send me a question to answer in video form, it would be fantastic if you could record yourself in video form as well. Don't worry about getting the lighting to look absolutely fantastic or your microphone being out of the screen or anything like that. It's fine if your microphone is in your face, or the most important thing about the video is that you sound good. Second most important thing about the video is that you are at least visible. So don't do it in a dark room with all the lights out. Turn some lights on, shine some lights on your face. Be at least visible, and especially sound good as you can. And you can send that to me, and it will be some great stuff that I can then incorporate into a video episode or a video answer, quick podcasting answers or tutorials or anything like that. Some cool video stuff that I'll be doing. Now, this will be, like I said, with the Canon T4i, and this will just be what I'll use for offline video recording. I might actually use my iPhone 5 to record some video as well. Why, you may ask? Well, because if I want to show you something on the Canon T4i, which is the camera I record from, unless I have a bunch of mirrors and rig up some fancy system of mirrors and reflections, I'm not going to be able to show you recording from the camera that I'm trying to show you how to do something. And I can't afford to get a second one. So I'll probably use my iPhone 5 to do some HD video as well, as I might show you something on the camera. It'll be really cool, multi-camera angles and all of that. I'm really looking forward to this. By the way, if you're interested in getting a Canon T4i, right now, as of December 31st, 2012, the Canon T4i is $859 on B&H, and it's $999 on Amazon.com. Now, there's a clear price difference there, and they both include the nice 18 to 135 millimeter lens that is super quiet as well. And the deal at B&H is not only a better price, but they also give you an SD card. I think it's a 16 gigabyte SD card. I've got it right here in front of me. They say that they give for $859 at B&H Photo, you get a free 16 gigabyte Class 10 SD card to go along with that. So that's a fantastic deal. I'll have links to that in the show notes, or if you want to jump straight to it, go to theaudacitypodcast.com/T4I-BH. That's my affiliate link, or you can get that in the show notes at theaudacitypodcast.com/109. And like I said, watch out for my videos on YouTube, and watch out for the new podcast in iTunes and soon other podcast directories as well, the video edition of this. I'm looking forward to that. And I'll have an episode soon I've already talked to my friend Ray Ortega from the Podcasters Studio and Podcasters Roundtable about doing an episode with me to talk more about what it takes to jump into video or transition into video, to do video well, and a lot of stuff like that I think you'll really benefit from. I'm looking forward to that interview. That will be sometime later in January or February that we'll do that. So I'm excited about the video that I'll be doing for the Audacity podcast going forward. Also in 2013, I am working toward releasing one, maybe two WordPress plugins. Now, they may not appeal to everyone. I'm certainly not going to compete with PowerPress or anything like that. One of the plugins will do something on top of PowerPress, something that I think you'll really like, and it's something that I already do on my podcast websites, and it's really cool how it works, and I hope to release that as a plugin for WordPress. And then the other thing will be something that right now I'm developing it as a plugin just to simplify some of my workflow, but then I might eventually release it as a plugin that will incorporate some of the stuff I do on my site for podcasts that you can do on your site then for podcasts too. I don't want to release too much information about this stuff yet because I can't promise what will be what, and I don't know yet whether they'll be free or a free and paid upgrade or just premium upgrades, but I do need to be able to make some income from it in some ways, but I want to make sure also that it's a tool that you'll be able to use. So I think you might like it, and that will be coming, I hope, in 2013 as I develop those. Also, speaking of things that I'm working to develop and possible products, I'll be working on some digital products. Last Black Friday in 2012, I tweeted something like, by this time next year, I will have some digital products so that I can reduce them to ridiculously low prices for Black Friday. And I'm serious about that. I want to have products out there that will be thorough, they'll be timeless, and they'll be extremely informative in training you on something, in showing you how to use something or how to optimize your workflow or do certain things on your website, in your podcast, with podcast equipment, stuff like that. I want to release these tutorials that will be high quality, really informative, give you the information you know, and then be able to sell those so that you can purchase them, download them, watch them over and over again. You'll be able to refer to notes that come along with the videos and other training and such like that. I have plans for many different things: Audacity training products, audio equipment training products, and more. But then I'll also be releasing free videos on YouTube and in the video edition of the Audacity podcast as well. So digital products coming in 2013. I'd like to try and produce one per month, if at all possible. It is possible. I'll just change that. It is totally possible. I just need to make it happen. I need to commit and focus on making it happen. Can't say it'll happen in January this year because I've got so much going with CES and New Media Expo. But shortly after that, I hope to have videos out, products out that you'll be able to purchase. And along with that, some people really prefer that one-on-one training and consulting. And I'm going to optimize the services that I offer and maybe drop off a couple services or pick up new services and really refine what I offer as services for one-on-one training and consulting. And stuff like for helping you launch a podcast or upgrade your podcast, launch a website, redesign it, improve your podcasting workflow, blogging workflow, even anything like that, or just some kind of one-on-one training for teaching you how to use things on your website, integrate your website with other things. I am available for that, and I would love to help you with that. My rate for 2013 is $200 per hour with a minimum of 1 hour of one-on-one training, but then we do it where I show you my screen, let you see what's going on. And then after we have our one-on-one training, then I send you the video and audio from our session and some notes along with it so that you can refer back to it later on. It's kind of like on-demand digital product production, but it's completely one-on-one and it's what you need. So if you're interested in that, I would love to hear from you. And if you'd like to schedule some one-on-one training, we can put that on the calendar, and you can email me feedback@theaudacitypodcast.com, and I'd love to help you out with that. But so those are a couple things right there, or a few things that I'll be selling. And I know many of you out there want to support what I'm doing with the Audacity podcast because you feel that it's benefited you. And I receive many emails from people who say, thank you so much for producing this information. I really appreciate it. And I receive many emails where people say, I looked all over your website and can't find where I can leave you a tip or a donation. So I will be adding that to the site. I'm not going to push it or promote it. It's not going to be like an episode sponsorship kind of thing. But just if you find the information helpful, then it's an option for you that if you'd like to leave a tip, you'll be able to. Now, this could be something that you could definitely consider doing on your own site of, especially if you give free information that's beneficial to people or you provide a very entertaining experience, give them the opportunity to donate and mention it and maybe ask for it, because if you don't ask, you won't receive, and put that on your website. Our podcast about Once Upon a Time over at oncepodcast.com has all of its costs pretty much covered. Now, the costs change each month, but the costs are, for the most part, covered by donations because we have a donate option on the website where people can sponsor an episode and we have certain levels set up. And some people have actually donated several $100s over the course of the podcast, which is just blows my mind that they are so generous like that for the podcast that we're doing about a TV show. But we're so grateful for that. And so I'll be putting something kind of similar on the Audacity podcast site soon. If you'd like to leave a tip, I'd be very grateful, but you don't have to. Certainly don't have to. The Audacity podcast will always be free. So you don't have to worry about that. It's not going to be like, if I don't receive enough tips, then I'll stop podcasting. And I'm not going to push it a whole lot either, but it'll just be there if you want to use it. Something else I'm doing differently in 2013, and you may have noticed this already, is I'm tweaking how the show note titles are organized. Previously, what I had done is I would have a title, a podcast abbreviation, the episode number, and then the actual title of the episode. So, for example, the show notes for this episode would have read, and as their title, something like TAP109 : what's coming in 2013. Now I'm moving that little code or abbreviation to the end of the episode title in the show notes. So now it will read what's coming in 2013 space dash space TAP109. The reason I'm doing that is I really appreciated something I heard from my friend Dave Jackson over at School of Podcasting. And he was talking about this. This is one of his pet peeves when podcasters do this, that they have the whole name of their podcast, like the Audacity podcast, that name, not just the title of the episode, the name of the podcast as a whole and episode number at the beginning of their show notes title. So if you scroll down in iTunes or in any podcast program, what you see is the Audacity, the Audacity, the Audacity, the Audacity, the Audacity, and you can't see what the episode title is. And that's why I compress it down to an abbreviation to say TAP109 : and then the episode title. But I realize even that is taking up space and distracting from the beginning of the episode titles. So I'm moving that to the end of it. I'm giving up this idea that the episodes need this in order to be ordered chronologically. There are so many other ways to do that properly, like with the ID3 tags, putting in a track number and making that sequential. Your release dates help make things sequential or chronological. So putting that number there and the abbreviation at the beginning is not so important as I once thought it was. Podcast programs are smart enough to order things in the order that they're released, and especially in the order of the track number in your ID3 tags. That's really important that you put that track number in there. That can just be your episode number, and that works out really well. So by moving that to the end, also, that means that you're in your podcast program, you'll start seeing the actual titles, not just the TAP109 : Now, this doesn't change how my show notes and titles appear to Google and people who use search engines, because I never wrote the titles like that for search engines. I use the StudioPress themes as my core for designing websites, and they have some great search engine optimization. By the way, you can check out those themes at theaudacitypodcast.com/StudioPress. And I love their core framework called Genesis, and it has search engine optimization built in, but you can also get a theme like Thesis or a plugin like All-in-One SEO, and it lets you do these things that makes a separate title that appears differently to search engines. And if you bookmark the site, something different than what you see very prominently on the site. So that's why if you ever bookmarked one of my show notes pages or search for it in Google, you would never see that TAP109 part, because that was irrelevant to Google, irrelevant to people searching, irrelevant to your bookmarks, really. But Dave Jackson pointed out in his episode that this is kind of a pet peeve, that even when it's short, it still gets in the way. And I realized another problem. You've noticed that I tend to release episodes with these compelling titles. It'll be stuff like how to do this, or 10 ways to do this, or 5 reasons you need this. Now, that's because I'm trying to make concise, very great, compelling titles that tell you about the content, let you know what to expect. And also, it helps me in driving how I present the information, so that I know if I'm giving a how-to, then each step needs to be how to do this and all of that. And if I start an episode title with a number, then that number gets kind of lost when it has a number right before it. Like in the chat room, Anonymous Cow is reminding me of how I use this phrase, 10 ways to be awesome, as an example of an episode title. So if I had TAP101 : 10 ways to be awesome, that number 10 just kind of blends in with the TAP101, and it doesn't really stand out as much. So then you just see ways to be awesome. And that's on the website. That's not how it's shared in Twitter. That's not how it appears in Google or anything like that. But it's just on the website. I think that this can be done better. So that's why I'm moving it to the end. And you'll see that starting retroactive on older podcast episodes as well as the other podcasts that I host. So it's not for SEO. It's just for convenience. And yeah, I'm still putting that abbreviation in at the end. And if you're considering doing this change too, I recommend that you still leave it in there, especially if you tell people, and this is not what I recommend doing, but if you tell people, go to my website and check out the show notes for episode 110. But if your titles don't actually say what episode number they are, then people can't find it unless you give them a direct URL, which I highly recommend. And you can do that with PrettyLink. But I talked about a lot of this stuff already at the audacitypodcast.com. So I'm tweaking the show note titles. And last thing, at least at the moment, that I'm planning to do differently in 2013, and again, you have already seen some of this on the audacitypodcast.com, is I'll be doing some more blogging, especially some more blogging about podcasting news and deals that I think may benefit you. So as podcasters, we don't have a lot of money. And some of the things I'm saying, you may think that sounds like business is going fantastic for me. No, it's not going fantastic. It's survivable, really. But we're all looking for deals. We're trying to save money. We're trying to get the best thing that we can and trying to do some awesome stuff with the tools that we have. What I want to do in 2013 is let you know more often when there are fantastic deals out there that you may really appreciate. I did this recently when I saw that HostGator had a fantastic deal on their hosting on December 21st when the Mayan calendar supposedly proclaimed that the world would end. It kind of forgot leap days and leap years and all of that stuff and the difference of years back then compared to how we count them now. But anyway, HostGator had this end of the world deal that for 4 hours you got 75% off, and for the whole day you got 50% off. And it was an affiliate link in there, but it was such an amazing deal that I thought, I gotta tell people about this. Some people who are thinking, oh, website hosting costs too much might really like this. So this is an opportunity for them to save money. So I'm going to try and do this again in the future as I see special sales. Like there was a ScreenFlow coupon going on for a little while and different discounts here and there. As I find these things, I want to share them with you so that in case you've been thinking about getting a particular resource or trying to find the lowest price on something, I want to try and let you know when those things go on sale, so that if you've been waiting for a sale, you'll be able to get that sale and not miss it. Because, I hate the feeling of missing a good sale or being too quick to buy something. Like my camera, the T4i, the price I spent for it, if I'd waited 2 months, I could have saved $400 on it. And that kills me. But anyway, that's a little pet peeve of mine. So I'm going to be podcasting or sharing in the blog over at the Audacity Podcast some more podcasting news, some deals, and some general stuff that you might appreciate reading about in the blog while I do the podcast. So I'm going to try and blog in between podcast episodes some useful information. So make sure you go over to the audacitypodcast.com and subscribe to the RSS feed in your favorite RSS reader. Not just the podcast, but also watch the blog as I release this information. Like recently, the Tascam IM2, which is a little portable recorder that plugs into an iPhone 4 and 4S or some iPads and iPod Touches, went on a significant sale, and it jumped back up. Then it went back down to the sale. And if you want to check that out, go to theaudacitytopodcast.com/IM2. And I saw some people purchase that, so I'm really looking forward to hearing back from them what they thought of that. And they said it was something they were looking for, and that's fantastic to know. So watch that on the Audacity to Podcast, and all of these things that I'll be doing, especially watch for these videos coming soon on the Audacity to Podcast and the new video feed that will be in iTunes very soon and other podcast programs after that. You can find this list of things I'll be doing differently in 2013 over in the show notes for this episode at theaudacitytopodcast.com/109. So that's what I'm going to be doing differently and upgrading and changing in 2013. What are you going to be doing? I really want to hear from you. What are you going to be doing differently with your podcast in 2013? It might be upgrading something. It might be trying something different. It might be you plan to redesign your website or change WordPress themes or anything like that. I would love to hear from you. So please email me feedback@theaudacitytopodcast.com or call 903-231-2221. Or you can also go to theaudacitytopodcast.com and click on the send a voice message link in the sidebar. Or if you're looking on your mobile phone, it will be down at the bottom of the site or near the bottom of the site that you'll be able to send feedback. Actually, I'm probably going to change that so it's a bit more prominent. And like I said, check out the site on your mobile device or squeeze your browser down to a smaller size as soon as I launch that, which will be very, very soon. I'll announce it in the blog when I do actually launch that over at theaudacitytopodcast.com. Now, I'm recording this on New Year's Eve, and I hope that you had a very wonderful Christmas. And if you hear this before New Year's Day, I hope that you have a Happy New Year. Actually, that greeting applies for the entire year. So I hope that you have a happy new year in 2013 and your podcast finds great success. You set some new goals for yourself and you achieve those goals in 2013, whether they be big, audacious goals or small goals. Whatever it is, I hope that you'll share those with me on the site, in the show notes, or email me directly, feedback@theaudacitytopodcast.com. And I would love to hear from you what you're doing differently in 2013. And I would love to see you succeed with each of these things. So you can get these show notes over at theaudacitytopodcast.com/109 and watch for our upcoming CES coverage, including live streaming video over at tpn.tv. And the podcast awards will be very soon, so we'll find out who won in each of those categories. And I'm really excited for the awards ceremony that will be live in Las Vegas on January 7th, 2013, over at New Media Expo in Las Vegas. My wife and I will be there, and really looking forward to having a lot of fun. Please follow me on Twitter at @TheRamenNoodle. And make sure that you're subscribed to the podcast or leave ratings and reviews in iTunes, and you can get all those links at theaudacitytopodcast.com. Now that I've given you some of the guts and taught you some of the tools, it's time for you to go podcast with passion, organization, and dialogue. I'm Daniel J. Lewis. Thank you so much for listening, and have a Happy New Year. The Audacity to Podcast is a proud member of Noodle Mix Network. Find more of our podcasts to make you think, laugh, and succeed at noodle.mx. Like get our Once Upon a Time podcast with theories and discussion, laugh with our clean comedy, learn how to be productive, get a Christian worldview, see Christian movie reviews, and more at noodle.mx. And the Audacity to Podcast is also a proud member of the TechPodcasts Network. If it's tech, it's here. There are so many podcasts on technology, different aspects of technology, medical technology, gaming technology, podcasting technology, blogging technology, general technology, specific technology. You get the idea. Lots of podcasts about technology, and watch for our really amazing